That's why I've always referred to Dave as the useful idiot, because wrestlers know that he's useful because he'll repeat anything you tell him if you give him a cookie and tell him he's a great guy. And he's an idiot because he doesn't check anything. So he is the classical definition of a useful idiot. And it bothered me when talent would do that, only because I would never reach out to a dirt sheet and say, hey, I'm thinking about not signing this guy. His contract's up in 6 months. What do you think? I would never do that. It's inappropriate. And I get it. People are going to do it. Talent's going to do it. Maybe promoters do it now. I don't know. But I just think look, when it comes to business and contract negotiations, anybody that negotiates in public loses credibility with me in any forum, in any business. I just think it's like cheap heat. I lose respect quickly for people that do it.
Well, Jimmy Sorensen's got another great question. Eric, why do you think the wrestling community gives Dave so much credibility, even though he doesn't deserve it? And I'm assuming he's referring to Meltzer.
Yeah, look, first of all, I don't think that the wrestling community as a whole think very much of Dave Meltzer. All you have to do is read any of the comments on anything he posts, and you'll get a pretty good view of the world in terms of what the internet wrestling community thinks of Dave Meltzer. I actually muted Dave because he was no longer entertaining for me. But if you go and look at just about anything that he posts, just read the comments. And look, Dave got there first. Kudos to him. Always respect people that get there first. They see an opportunity. They see an underserved market. They figure out a way to serve it, fill a hole, and
build a business.
You got to admire that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, not only is there anything wrong with it, I think it's admirable. And he got there first. And for a long time, until, as you pointed out, 5 years later, Wade Keller came along. But by that time, Dave Meltzer was solidified as the guy.
Right.
Particularly, partially because he got there first. And by the nature of what he was reporting. He was the guy that was backstage at a David Copperfield show, hiding behind a curtain, writing down all the magic tricks and exposing them to the world, essentially. And that's compelling. You can build it. You can build an audience, because especially with wrestling, because it was still so mysterious. I mean, everybody knew what it was, but they didn't know how they got there and how it was actually executed. There was always that mystique about what was really going on behind the scenes, more in professional wrestling than, say, on a set of a network movie series or network television series. So Dave got there first with his reliance upon rumor and innuendo and being fed and manipulated by wrestling talent. For the first time, readers were able to, I'm getting an inside look at what's going on. It made the readers feel empowered. And since Dave got there first, he'd been there for 5 years, he planted the flag. And as a result of that, developed, unfortunately, credibility. He didn't deserve it, but he earned it.
So I'm going to cut you off because now we got another great question from Jim in Buffalo. Eric, I believe you mentioned in the past you would talk to Meltzer on occasion in the 90s. When did your opinion of him change from someone you could talk to someone you dislike?
Well, I started out disliking him. And I thought he was a scumbag and a parasite. And sometime around, I don't know if it was 93 or 94, I don't remember, man. It was a long time ago. A guy by the name of Zane Breslov, who had formerly worked not in WWE, but he was a vendor. He was a promoter,
right,
that WWE used a lot, and he was really good. And he knew everybody. He was one of those guys that knew. He had guys inside everywhere. Right? And Zane left WWE and came to work for WCW. And we just kind of hit it off. Zane was he passed away, unfortunately, in a car accident. But Zane and I got to be pretty good friends. I liked the way he communicated. I mean, I tell the story all the time. Zane and I would talk 10 times a day for about 20 seconds a crack. It was just to the point, ask a question, get the answer, see you later, bye. And that's how I communicate most comfortably. And we just hit it off, and we became closer friends. And Zane and Dave were friends. I don't know how tight they were, but they were friendly at least. And Zane said, man, you should talk to him. You find a way to use him. If you get him on your side, blah, 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 blah. Because I used to complain about him to Zane.
I'm
Zane
sure.
would try to convince me what a great guy Dave really was. So I thought, you know what? I'm being a little pig-headed here. I'll give it a shot. If I give him access, Dave, if I give Dave access and we end up getting more honest coverage, not necessarily, I didn't expect him to, put everything I do over. I'm not even going to comment.
No.
I didn't expect that, but I did expect at least responsible coverage, because now he didn't have the excuse, well, these guys won't talk to me. They're going to lie to me no matter what. I said, all right, I'll do my part. I'll give him access.
Right.
And I'll be honest with him. I'm not going to bullshit him. See what happens. So I did. And it didn't matter. Dave continued to write absolute greasy nonsense because that's what worked. And that's all he knows. He's not a journalist. He doesn't second source. He just writes stuff if it fits his narrative or his goals.
Speaking of narrative and goals, Seth Myers has a great question. Do you think Meltzer has a financial stake in AEW and thus defends it as much as he does because of that?
Somebody told me he had like a 2 or 3% stake. I don't know if that's true or not. Could care less. And I don't think even if he did that was the motivator. I think what the motivator is clearly Tony Khan has given Dave more access than anybody else has as far as a promoter at that level, meaning a weekly television show on a major cable outlet. And I think Tony and Dave are a very similar perspective on professional wrestling. Their fandom is probably very similar in many respects, and their perspective of what the product should be appears at least to be very similar. I think Dave is emotionally invested, much more than financially. I don't think he's financially invested at all. He may get a spiff. I don't know. Probably not. But I think the real driver for someone like Dave is this is the first time in Dave's life he's had any kind of access to somebody that's actually running a company at that level. And he's just way too invested emotionally in it. I think it's to the point now where it's actually one of the reasons I quit following is because I think he's somewhat emotionally disturbed over the whole thing.